So glad to have you join us again for another episode of The Redeemed Man. My name's Nate, and today I've got with me Jay Brown. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I'm super excited about it.
Jay is originally from Jonesboro, Georgia, and now lives in Birmingham, Alabama. He's been married to his wife, January, for 10 years, and they have a beautiful little girl named Journey. He's been working in the church for the past 5 years, and according to my wife, he is very competitive, loves working out, pickleball, video games, and you can tell that just by his hobbies that he's very competitive. He's really most proud of his marriage, according to what we talked about previously, due to just how he grew up in a single-parent home. And according to my wife, don't tell anybody else, but Jay, she says that you are her favorite person to work with. And so she has definitely loved you guys and thankful for you. Welcome to the show today. And we're excited about the conversation we're going to have. And we're going to jump right in really to your childhood and talk a little bit about how you grew up. Mentioned that you came from a single parent home, what that was like growing up in Jonesboro, and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so like you said, my mom's a single mom. I'm one of six, and so I'm number three.
Okay, number three.
Number three of six. So I've kind of just been floating around life this whole time, and, trying to learn how to do life kind of on my own. But we honestly had a great childhood though. It was awesome. I mean, my family. Come from a pretty huge family. My grandparents were married for 68 years.
Wow.
So they were
wow.
And they had 7 kids. And so from that group of 7 kids, 5 of those kids had 6 kids. So we have a massive family.
Gosh, that's a massive family.
And all of us live within a 30-mile radius of each other. So it felt like, the old school family it felt almost like a compound, to be honest. Like we did everything together. We did all holidays together. So like in my mind, like big holidays, big family things were always normal. But I mean, times were tough. I mean, my mom's a single mom, like I said. And really, my grandparents were kind of the stable rock of our family. And so growing up in Jonesboro was awesome. I didn't know any different. Like, I just didn't know many things that I didn't even realize, like, what Atlanta was at the time, because I'm just a kid in Jonesboro. Yeah. And I didn't really recognize it until I came to Alabama. It's like, it's just a little different than what I grew up in. But I graduated from Mundy's Mill High School in Jonesboro and quickly moved. Before I got to Birmingham, I actually lived in 2 spots in Alabama. I went to Marion Military Institute for 2 years and played baseball there. I went there because I wanted to play both sports, basketball and baseball. I grew up playing sports my whole life, and Marion was the spot that allowed me to do both. And but I got there and realized 2 sports in college is kind of difficult. And so actually my baseball coach, who's one of my best friends now and honestly is huge in my just story to finding Christ, he sat me down about 3 weeks into me trying to do both and told me I was 6'2" and not going to the NBA. So I need to drop one. And he was like, you have a better shot in baseball. So I dropped basketball, did baseball. Probably one of the more pivotal decisions in my life because I got to be closer to him. He kind of led me to Christ. And we did the baseball thing at Marion for 2 years. Then I moved to Tuscaloosa and played 2 years at Stillman College, which was awesome. Met some of my best friends there, met my wife there. And throughout being there, is where I kind of got involved with the church. So I know that kind of got a long spectrum of things. But back to Jonesboro, I loved growing up in Atlanta. I loved growing up in Jonesboro. A lot of my family still lives there. Yeah. And like I said, it was just a different upbringing. It's so much that as you get older, you realize that some things were just not normal, but they were just normal to you. And it's I tell the story to my wife all the time about how we used to just walk places, and it was just like, now if I go back there, I would never let my daughter walk around these places. But my mom's awesome. She was actually here this weekend with us, and And now our family is like, we're in the fun part. When you have 6 kids when you're little, and then you all become adults and become, have jobs and have kids. Now we're in the fun part of like sibling life. So we go from 45. My sister's 45. My brother's 38 until next week. Oh, to tomorrow actually. Yeah, his birthday's tomorrow. He's 30. He'll be 39. I'm 34. I have 2 sisters that below me that are twins that are 31. I have a brother that's 27. And now we have.
You guys have a lot of fun when you're together then.
Oh yeah, and now we have 8. My mom has 8 grandkids, and so now it's just a whole lot of buying them whatever they want and spoiling them. Well, yeah, that's kind of our life. We love it. And then I met my wife. We've been married for 10 years. We got married fresh out of college, young and stupid, just like no money, no plan. I was a teacher then. I taught high school for 7 years, and I was a teacher then. First year teacher, she was in grad school, and we thought we were just going to make it. And by the grace of God and ramen noodles, we did it. So,
And January's from Alabama, correct? She's from South Alabama?
yeah, she's from Enterprise, which is a whole different world in itself.
Very different than Jonesboro.
Oh, yeah. She took me to Enterprise the first time, and she was, like, super excited. And I was like, where are we? Like, this is crazy. And she kept talking about the city. Like, she would say, like, yeah, when we go to Enterprise, I'm going to take you to the city. And she was talking about Dothan. And I was like, okay, like, I can't wait to see. Because also, being in Atlanta, like, we didn't travel. Like, I played travel baseball growing up. That was, like, the most I traveled. But if you go to a baseball tournament, like you playing at a park and you go back to the hotel, you may go to like a tourist spot, but like you're not really traveling a ton. And so for me, when she's talking about, in my head, like, I don't know, there's not a huge city in South Alabama. I just like, I don't know anything. And so like she's like, oh, we're gonna go to a city in Dothan. It's like, oh, awesome! I can't wait to get to Dothan. And no, I'm not like pooping on Dothan or anything, but it's pretty much like every chain restaurant you can think of. Yep. It's in Dothan, Alabama.
Yeah.
And she was just so excited to take me there, and I was like, January, I'm from Atlanta. Like, this is like, I don't know what you think this is. But yeah, she's from Enterprise. She's awesome. Her family, that's a whole different story in itself. Like, her dad's military, her mom's Cambodian, and so they met on the military base, got married, and January was born in Germany because he was stationed there, and so they end up moving to Enterprise because of the base there in Fort Rucker, and so they kind of settled there, and she grew up in South Alabama, and she is very South Alabama sometimes.
Well, when I think of South Alabama, Jay, I think of Fort Rucker. Yeah. I think of the Peanut Festival.
Oh, yeah.
And I think about the rattlesnake radio.
Hey, I want you to know that on our staff here at our church, there is a person from OP who swears by the rattlesnake rodeo. He's like, it's one of the best events you can ever be a part of.
Leave me out of that. No, I don't want to be anywhere around rattlesnakes. Nowhere close.
That's awful. Yes.
Well, Jay, I thank you for sharing a little bit of your background. I want to kind of go back to your childhood and thinking about growing up with a single mom. You mentioned your grandparents, but who are some of those other pivotal male mentors in your life growing up as a kid that really stepped in and influenced you, what your view of fatherhood and manhood looked like, and really mentored you in that area?
Well, honestly, man, my grandfather would be number one. And we didn't even get along when I was little. It was like, we didn't. Like, he's, hardworking. He owned a construction business. Like, he built it from the ground up. Like, and in his mind, everybody that came through our family needed to work for the construction business. Yeah. So, and I was just not. Like, I like playing pickleball and video games. Construction work isn't really like my thing. And I let it be known that like I don't want to do that ever. Like, I mean, most of my cousins and my brothers, like by the time they were 13 or 14, they were going out with him doing construction. He was paying them in cash, probably illegal, but just like doing stuff. But as I got older, I started to realize that how much of a provider for his family he was, and how he was the patriarch of our family. just his strong. So I think like from him, what I think I took in the most was just like how to be stable, how to just keep chopping wood, how to keep plowing. I keep doing that. He died with pretty much nothing. Like, I mean, it's kind of sad to say, but because he worked so hard to provide for everybody else. And so like, and I think he would have, and I say that, and it sounds kind of sad, but I think he wouldn't have had it any other way. Like, I think that's just the way he wanted it to be. I also had a few baseball coaches that were just awesome in my life. One of them was a guy named Jimmy. He's my guy Jimmy. My best friend was his dad. My best friend was CJ. His dad's name was Jimmy, and Jimmy wasn't like the most like squared away, like most like buttoned up person, but Jimmy was always there. Like, it wasn't like, I mean, what's crazy is the most I remember about Jimmy is him teaching me how to throw beer bottles out of a window and hit signs in cars. Like, that was kind of like what we did in the car. But I do remember like having Jimmy. Jimmy was just always there when I needed Jimmy. Like, he would pick me up for baseball practice. He would take me to he taught me how to swim. He taught me to the lake for the first time. He took me to the lake for the first time. Like, he always allowed like me and CJ to just, I mean, sometimes do crazy things, but never like just hammered us for it. Like, we played ding dong ditch in his neighborhood all the time, and we always got in trouble, but he never just like, what he was doing was he was adding value to me, and I didn't even know it at the time. Like, it was just by just being there and being available, and he knew my situation at home, and he just loved me. He called me son. He still calls me son now. Like, he called me son all the time. He was just a great dude. And as I got older, I feel like I got great mentors and great examples when I got to college. Because I came to college not knowing pretty much anything. Like I said, I knew Jonesboro and South Atlanta. That was pretty much it. I didn't know much about life. My baseball coach, his name's Brett Davis. He was huge. He taught me, he was the first person to tell me God loves me, that God cares for me, that he wants a relationship with me. He introduced the whole gospel to me, honestly. Like, he showed me how to worship, how to be a part of a local church. Like, he was the one that kind of took me under his wing the most. And so, those three people, honestly, just growing up were the people. Jimmy probably was, my grandfather obviously was the longest tenured of person. Jimmy was, I played baseball with CJ from age 8 to age 16. So he was a huge part of my life. And so, it's kind of interesting. When I became a teacher, that was, I just remember I wanted to do for kids as Jimmy did for me. It was just like, hey, I'm not here to be your dad, but I'm here to, if you need something, I'm here type person. And Jimmy never, like, it was funny, like, my mom is such a now she is. Back in the day, she was kind of hard on us. Then her blood pressure got a little high, so she had to stop being hard on us. But Jimmy was always, like, graceful, but also, like, stern. Like, he was like, I'm teaching you how to be a man, but also I need you to know that I love you, and I'm here for you. And I can hit a baseball really far, so he really was nice to me most of the time.
I think Jay mentioning those guys in your life, you see two things very evident: the whole role as a provider, and I think we as men, most of us really own that one. I think the one we struggle with oftentimes is what Jimmy gave you was the gift of presence. I think as dads, it's so easy for us to shift to the providing part and, I'm going to do all this for my family versus being present in our family's lives. And it sounds like Jimmy was such an example of that. But then also for you being his son's best friend, of giving guys some space to a little bit of roughhouse and play. I think, you statistically in studies you see today, there's a great struggle for young men to really find themselves in a safe environment where they can be a little mischievous, kind of roughhouse a little bit. We tend to kind of suppress a lot of that. And there's definitely a healthy way. We don't want kids out of control. But I think one of the things it sounds like Jimmy really gave you was the ability to kind of grow and experience and kind of take some steps, but still be stern when he needed to be and step in, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's honestly interesting because when me and my wife were getting ready to have our first child, I was nervous about having a boy. We ended up having a girl, but I was really nervous because I didn't know if I could balance that well. In terms of like, I didn't know if I felt this. I mean, it was completely from the enemy. I felt this like almost this like pressure towards like, if we have a boy, how am I going to navigate, discipline, and how am I going to navigate being graceful but also being stern? And my grace level just naturally is lower for boys than it is girls. Like, just to be honest, like I think a lot of us are that way.
Yeah.
You have a little girl and it's like she's the sweetest thing in the world. You have a little boy and you don't want to ruin it, type thing. And so I completely agree with like the idea of like suppressing that kind of space for them, because we all needed it. Like we all had the same. I mean, right now, if you put 10 of us in a room, we're probably going to start wrestling right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of just a natural instinct for guys. And so, yeah, for sure. But that gift of presence is something as a dad that I even have to remind myself now, because we naturally want to show love how we like to be loved. And I like to be the way I'm an acts of service person. So, like, I like people to do things for me. I don't necessarily need. Like, my wife is a quality time person, and we just, for our first couple years of marriage, it was like I didn't understand it. It's like, I'm rubbing your feet, I'm washing dishes, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and we just not seeing eye to eye. It's because she just wants my presence to be around, and I want her to just do everything. So it's like that's kind of like what I'm constantly fighting as a parent. It's like I can't do enough to substitute just being present for my daughter. And so that's a great point.
Shifting a little bit, going back to your college experience and your college coach playing such a pivotal role in your relationship with Christ. I would love to hear what redemption means to you, Jay, and then unpackage a little bit about how your college coach began to disciple you and help you grow in your faith.
Yeah, so redemption for me is honestly a gift. And I truly believe that everybody should have a chance for redemption. You know what I mean? Like, I think we can go many different directions with that, but I just believe that for me, I think everybody deserves chance after chance, because that's what Jesus gives us, And my college coach, Brett, man, he's awesome, man. The year before I got there, he radically got saved at a restaurant in Bibb County, Alabama. Like, he talked to a girl at a random restaurant and radically changed his life. The guys that were on the team before that said he literally cussed us out the day before at practice, and then the next day he never cursed again. It was like radical change. And so luckily, I mean, God's timing and God's it's just miraculous that he didn't even recruit me to come to Marion. The basketball coach did, and I ended up with him. And it's like God's hand was all over it. And with him, man, he really was working out his new faith and new worldview in real time as he's trying to lead us in doing it. And I think that was perfect for me, because I didn't need a polished Christian when I got to college. I needed somebody that was trying to figure it out alongside. So what he did was very smart. He just decided that we all going to figure this out together. Like, if you want to be on this ride, let's get on this ride together. And so we would do, he started FCA at our college, which was great. And what's funny is I grew up in church a ton, but it was like Southern Baptist Black Church. So it was, I didn't know anything. It was just like, it was a great show every Sunday, but I really just didn't know a thing. And that's not true for all of those churches, but for mine it was. And so we get into the very first Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and this guy brings out this guitar, and he's making a stand, and like he's strumming and playing, and I'm very confused. Like, I don't know anything that's going on. But what was awesome is he presented the gospel the that day I accepted the gospel, and then he immediately just continued to follow up every day. Like he would do things like, "Hey, Jay's gonna pray for the team today." So I'm gonna do what? Like, or Jay's gonna, "Hey Jay, I want you to, say something to the team before this," or "Hey Jay, I want you to, I don't know, lead this softball prayer huddle." Like anytime he can throw me into something, he was about it. And for what he didn't know and what I didn't know at the time was he just saw something in my life that was a gift that God has given me. And so I think for him, the best thing that he did to help disciple me was he just continued to push. Like he pushed and pushed and pushed. And as he was working out his faith, he was taking me and a couple other guys just along with him. And now he launched a church in Bibb County, which is awesome. It's the Redemptive Story, and me and January actually sit on the board of his church, and we help them with a lot of kids ministry stuff. And so, all that to say, I think the simplicity of just taking someone along the journey with you, not being the expert, leading with curiosity and not allowing for your knowledge to be unreachable for people. I think that was the best thing, because it was simple, just like robbed me to this place and let's talk on the way there. It was never, I don't think we ever sat down and had a formal mentor section. It was always because he country too, so he was always let's go. His dad owned a high fence deer farm, so he's let's go look at the deer and just talk. Okay, great, let's do that. I ain't never seen deer before in my life. That's great. So that's kind of.
No, that's Jay. I think that is really the perfect example of what discipleship really is all about. It is about following Jesus and bringing others along with you.
Yeah.
Jesus, when he was doing his ministry, was literally these guys around him and let's go fish and let's go do this. And he's talking and teaching and using stories and really just doing life. And I think so many times when we get into the church context is we want to develop this nice clean lines of this is how it should look. And the reality of it is it is all about relationships and all about, you pouring your life into other people and journeying with others and Deuteronomy 6, like the word of God all throughout your life, you're using it as a way to teach because it is the way that we make decisions. It is the God that we have for our life. And so I love Brett's example of how he did that with you. And then just being early on in his faith himself going, hey, I want other people to experience this. I want other people to grow in this and bringing you along the journey as he grew and as he learned about Christ, you learned about Christ. And that's such an awesome picture of really what our lives should be in influencing others. And so thank you for sharing that story. And thank you for, if he listens to this, thank you for the influence on Jay's life and the impact. And then what's so cool about that, you mentioned the young lady at the restaurant and how, who knows what all she knows, but just how when we're faithful in sharing the story of transformation and what Jesus has done in our life, how it impacts other people. And you never know how that's going to impact other people beyond those that you can see. Such a beautiful picture. Jay, you and January met while you were there in college, your next college, and then you guys have been married for 10 years. Talk a little bit about what that's been like, growing up again, single mom, learning how to do life with somebody else, how to keep friendship first and foremost in your marriage, and then stepping into parenting and how that's changed your relationship and your marriage. Because I know, there's a lot of guys that I think, start their marriage and they see where they're at and they think it's going to stay that way. And I know you can speak to how marriage is always changing and you're always learning something different about your spouse, and your spouse is changing, and how to keep investing in your home.
The 10 years of marriage has been awesome. It hasn't been the easiest all the time. Anybody that's been married for more than 2 days will tell you. I think there's always things that come up, and there's always, there's two imperfect people trying to do a life together. I think we got married so young and and that's just kind of, honestly, we probably wouldn't have got married if we didn't get involved in church together. So that I mean, only in Christian circles do people get married that young, and it feels like you're late when you do. But we definitely we got married at a time that wasn't on the outside the best time for us to get married. To be honest, like January was very young in her faith at that point. So when we met in college, she wasn't a part of a church. I really wasn't a part of a church at that time. We transitioned. I transitioned to Tuscaloosa. We had a moment of just not doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so when we met, I wasn't in a great place. And she was awesome. She just had never, her mom grew up Buddhist, and so she had never experienced Jesus and never known, she just hadn't been taught, and hadn't been exposed. And so when we got into the church and realized that, we wanted to get married, it was funny because she had said she thought she would never marry. And I'm like, well, we're dating. Where do you think this was going? But yeah, as in our first couple years, it was just like everybody else. You're trying to figure it out all together, and I was just bad at it, to be honest. Just want to be transparent. You never realize how selfish you are till you have another human with you, and then you have a kid and you realize you're real selfish.
Yes.
But I just wasn't good at it. I just wasn't good at communicating. I wasn't good at setting expectations for her, and I wasn't good at asking her what she expected from me. I just thought we like each other. Our dating was great. Marriage, we just gonna roll right on into it. We did some premarital work, and it honestly, it wasn't the best because our person didn't ask us the hard questions. Yeah. They just kind of asked us the fun questions. And of course, at that age, I'm not prying for hard questions. I'm just going. Oh, we made it through that section. All right, let's keep on rolling. Yeah. And then neither of us had a great model of marriage. January's parents were married, but they have later divorced, and their marriage wasn't centered on Christ, and it wasn't. They just didn't have a great marriage, and so we're just trying to put together all these pieces and bringing in some baggage and some history of things, and sexual history and things like that we're just trying to navigate together. And so the first couple of years were a little rough. Never to a point of will we ever consider. We always said from the beginning, divorce is never on the table. And so that was a very foundational piece. And that's what, when we counsel couples now, in the very first session, we say, is divorce ever on the table? And if you say yes, we tell you, well, you don't need to get married. That's just kind of what we say. And so the first couple of years were a little rough. And then, honestly, about 2 years in, I had the best way to describe it is I kind of had a breakdown within myself. And I finally, and I think some of it was I rekindled my relationship with my dad at 25. And so about a year and a half into 2 years in, I just had this moment that I was like, I need to start taking all these things that are not going well in my life and seeing the role I play in them. Yeah. So in reality, I think with my dad, just a good example, my dad and my mom never married, and they've always been cordial, but I just never really had a great relationship with my dad. And I've always blamed my dad for it because he was the dad, right? Yep. And so, but at 25, I finally decided that what I'm playing a part in this as well. So it's what effort can I put towards this to make this better? And so I did the same thing with my marriage. It was like, hey, on this, and what was also a thing was on the outside, we had a perfect marriage. We're both young and fun, and we got jobs, and we serve the church, and people love us, and blah, 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 blah. But on the inside, we were going home at night, and there was no life. So we wasn't arguing. We wasn't fighting. It was just we were just doing no life. There was just no life into it. And so I just decided what part am I playing here? How can I help navigate this a little better? And so I just started to ask questions. And it's just I just started to ask her how do you want me to love you? How do you want me to do this? What would you like for me to do? what would you desire? And I come to find out, if you start asking questions, they start telling you stuff. Like, it's just like, they'll tell you exactly what you want to know if you ask. They're not going to offer the information, but if you ask questions. And so one of the simple things was like, I had always handled our finances in our marriage. And I finally asked her, like, hey, do you want to even know what happens? And she was like, I would love to know what happens. It's like, great. Or like, I was like, we can have a financial meeting every month. That's great. Or she was like, one of the things was like, we always did date nights and they were great and all of that. So I started to get into the specifics of like, what would you like these to actually look like? Or like, what would you, in a perfect world, what would our weeks look like? And so I'll start asking all these questions. And eventually, you know, we got to a place of like me apologizing to say, you know, I should have probably started this thing off with asking questions. I just assumed we knew each other because we dated for a year and a half. And since then, I mean, we have been, obviously it's marriage, you got issues, but like since then, like we've never had a moment to where it was like, this is super tough. We've never had a moment where we were thinking like, man, we need to sit down and recalibrate. It's more or less like we now know what it is, how to fix it. We can find the stressor very quickly. And so since then we've had a really, and honestly, we work together. Her office is right beside mine, and that brings a dynamic in itself. But it also is, it's been a blessing to just have a wife that loves me, loves God, loves our family. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, the first couple of years of marriage are always, I think, tough for a lot of people. But since then, but I think a key question to always ask yourself when it comes to your marriage is, what role am I playing in it? And it's like, as the man, as the leader, it's not that she crazy. It's probably that you haven't figured out what's wrong yet, you know? And so I think when I took that ownership of, and I do the same thing leading teams now, it's like, what part am I playing to cause there to be tension in any form or fashion? So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know if that answered your question. But
No, it doesn't. I think the cool part about that is fun. You mentioned several things, but one of the things I think that is funny is we do think we know our spouse when we step into marriage after whatever length of time we've spent, because we're spending so much time talking to them. We think, oh, I understand everything about them. And the reality of it is they're, 18, 25 years, 30 years of life, and how we think we've got all of that packaged in that time that we've spent getting to know them. We really do have to be a student of our spouse. And it is, if we take that approach that we're consistently learning our spouse, we're trying to mine out, things of the heart of who they are and what makes up who they are, then we'll continually discover new things and be aware of their needs and their desires. I think that you mentioned the questions and the curiosity to learn your spouse is so important. And I think, as you do that, you learn things that you would have never learned if you didn't take the time to slow down and go, hey, how did this impact you? How does this make you feel? And especially for women, I think it is a huge need for them as us as men to lean in and ask questions, because guys oftentimes, I think, we don't really feel like we have to share sometimes, but I think a woman wants to, but they want the permission to. They want the engagement and the involvement in that, and it's not just, hey, I'm going to throw this out there. You guys work together. You mentioned that.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the things that you've learned about how to navigate that as a husband and wife team in ministry? Because your ministry has its own challenges, and then you guys are doing that together. What are some things that you've learned and how to do that as a team?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the curiosity piece of one of the questions I ask her regularly at work is, what role am I playing in this conversation for you? And it sounds funny, but it's like, am I your husband? You want me to answer as your husband? Want me to answer as your coworker? Or you want me to answer as the dream team director? So it's three different layers there. One, I can be your husband, and I can fight for you till I'm blue in the face. Okay, that's what I'm called to do. I will fight for you right now. The second one, am I your coworker? Are we just being friends talking about this right now? And then you don't want me to give you anything, like any answers. You just want to talk to me about it. Or am I the dream team director? Whereas you want me to tell you what to do. It's like, so like, what lane are we in? And honestly, to keep myself out of trouble, I ask that question just about every day. It's like, all right, whatever comes up here, what lane am I in here?
Yeah.
All right. And I will react according, however you desire me to react to it. But no, honestly, it's been awesome getting to work. We ride to work together every day. Our daughter's school is 2 miles down the street. We drop her off every day. The schedule of ministry is rough, like to call it a schedule is kind of even like a bad way to say it. It's kind of just life. We had 17 college kids at our house last night, but the fun part is like we enjoy the same parts of ministry. And so we enjoy being around next generations. We enjoy leading teams. We both love people to our core. I mean, our kind of family statements of Browns are love. So no matter what your background is, no matter what your situation is, we're going to love you regardless. We bring you in. I give the college kids the code to my house. I'm like, just come on over. And yesterday, literally, we got home and 2 of them were sitting on the couch before we got there. And so I think what makes it easy for me in January is we are so much alike when it comes to the things that we love. We never really have to turn it off. Like we'll leave work. She literally texts me mid-recording this and saying, this girl is coming over to our house for dinner tonight. Like we just don't turn it off. Yeah. And so it would be more difficult if I was me who don't turn it off and she had to turn it off at certain times. But what makes it simple too is just defining what role we're playing when we come into tensions at work. She had to tell me that I don't have to defend her, which is great. Like, cause when we first started working together, I would come to her defense at any point. Even if I knew she was wrong, I was like, I don't care. This is my family. Yeah. Which was slightly disrespectful to her because, she's a grown-up. She's a work. She wants to be seen as an equal just like everybody else. But for the big part of it, as long as we define what I am, the role that we're playing in everything that happens, it becomes a blessing to get to work together. I mean, it's a privilege. Like, when we have long work weeks, it's awesome. My wife is here. It's just like... And we help each other out a ton. We both have pretty big jobs, and we both try to help support each other the best we can. But I love it. I mean, she'll sometimes bust in my office without knocking, but you just deal with that. And I'll bust in her office, and she'll get mad about it. But hey, that's kind of how marriage works.
You both lead volunteers as well, and with leading volunteers, those have challenges. And I think one of the things that if you are in a good relationship with your spouse, you're learning a lot of things about how to lead somebody that at the end of the day can go, hey, I don't want to follow what you're saying. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot that if you are in a really good marriage that you can translate to volunteers. But what are some of the other leadership principles that are core to your effectiveness that you've gone, hey, this is really something that I've seen as I've led volunteers that helps me be effective in leading them well and caring for them well? Because I know there's a lot of challenges to that, but there's some great rewards. I often tell my wife, she had not been into ministry and been in Army life where everybody's saluting her, and I'm like, you're about to see a big change. And I think if you can lead volunteers, you can lead anybody. Like I really believe that, because I think you've got to have buy-in from volunteers. When somebody that's working for you, they're getting paid, so there's a little bit of that they're going to respond a certain way just due to that. But talk a little bit about what you've learned and how you approach that in leading volunteers. Yeah,
language is extremely important to me, and so the word I use is family all the time. And my goal is, one, I want everybody to feel like we're a family. And so, because I don't see you as a volunteer, I don't see you as a dream teamer. You're part of my family. And what that does is it lets people know that you care deeper about them than what they can do for you. Yeah. And so, my method to leading volunteers is, hey, if you give us your time, I'm not gonna manage or judge how much you do for us. You just get the benefit of being a part of an awesome family, a really big family. And so what do you do for your family? You take care of them well. You try to love them well. You don't. I try not to miss any big events for them. I just try to love them well. The whole mojo for me is all like, how can I make this massive family feel like a small family. And then I'm super curious about them. Like I'll ask like, and I have a lot of random methods of just like keeping up with stuff, but I'll ask them questions and then try to highlight it at some point, and I'll try to pop like one of my guys is a leader here. He retires on Friday, and I'm gonna show up at his job with balloons, like stuff. Like I'm just doing the over the top work to try to make it feel like a family. And I think adding value to people through curiosity is probably the best thing I can even tell you. It's just like if you can just be curious about everybody's story, be curious about everybody's walks of life, and then show them how they're not any different than any of us. We're all just trying to figure this out together. I don't actually wear my staff badge on Sundays. I wear a Dream Team sticker because I'm just part of this family together. Like I just so happen my role in this family is to give you direction.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I'm not, I am the leader, but don't see me as the leader. See me as a part. Just say I sit at the head of the table and I bless the food. That's all it is. Yeah. And so I think making volunteers feel like family, being curious about them, and then adding value to them, like figuring out like what makes them go, what makes them.
Yeah.
And it gets hard. I mean, our team right now is right over 700 people. So it's like, that's a lot of people, but if you hit the individual pocket, and not to talk about how I spend my time a ton, but I spend a lot of my time with multipliers. So I know if I make this person feel good, this person is going to make 30 more people feel good just by making this person feel good. And so and I'm an open book as well. I tell the Dream Team, it's like, hey, like me and January got an argument on the way here, but today's going to be a great day. It's just like, or Journey, like a couple Sundays ago, my daughter Journey just like crawled in our bed and peed all over it. And it's like, well, hey, Journey peed in my bed today, but thank God we got dryers and it's going to be a great day. So it's just like bringing them as close into my life as they can and adding value to them and just honestly being interested in what they're interested in. So I started playing pickleball just so I could meet more people. And now there's a lady at our church named Miss Patty Ann who's been playing pickleball for 40 years, and we have the best conversations around pickleball. Like it's just like what we do. And so I think adding value to them, making them feel like family, and then just care deeply about what they care about. And listen, like I think sometimes as leaders we just don't listen.
Yeah.
It's like we feed volunteers breakfast, and like I asked them if they liked the breakfast. Like, and I could just be like, be grateful for the breakfast. Or I could try to figure out a way to make the breakfast worth them liking it, Like, in reality, we ain't got to feed them breakfast. It's just like, it's not normal for churches to just pass out breakfast. But if we are going to pass out breakfast, let's hear what they have to say, and let's go from there. So I'm also my type of leadership is very much like I'm not a micromanager. I'm very much like, hey, I identified you. I love you. You go run that thing. And if you need me, rope me in. If you're going to do something crazy, let me know so I can defend you, but I trust you, type person. And so I tell my teams, like, if your team has anything that they want, let's talk about, make me tell you no. And that just adds value to people. It's like, I think sometimes as the leader, we want all the credit and we want all the, we want all the control. And in reality, like, your leadership can only go as far as you let it with that control. Whereas if you're just more of I like to think of myself as a delegator. It's like being more of a delegator and you allow people, but not delegating tasks, delegating responsibility and allowing them to just be able to run their show and they know that, and give them guardrails and allow them to just be able to make decisions and do things on their own with these guardrails. Most of the time, that gives that leader value, which then adds value to their team. Yeah. And now there's no chance that everybody's happy, but everybody knows that as this family unit together, we can accomplish anything because everybody's open to trying anything. And so that would be to lead volunteers. I just don't treat them like volunteers. I treat them like family. And you'll be, I'm sure Liz will tell you, like, people will start apologizing for not being there. And I'm like, hey, man, like, that's great. Like, we'll see you next week. We'll see you never. Like, I'll see you in heaven. Like, whatever. No matter what, you're always welcome back to this family. regardless if you serve once a month or you serve like Christmas only, like the family's still here for you. And so I think, and then really, sorry, another point is like you also got to realize they are volunteers, so you can't have an expectation for them like you have people that are salaried and paid. It's like, and so it's never we never need anything. It's always like, hey, we can do this without you, but we'll be better with you. That's kind of the mindset of like, nothing is gonna fall. Church is gonna happen whether you show up or not.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen. Now we will be better, and I would enjoy having you here with me to do it. Yeah. And that's not always the best method, but for me it works. It's like, because I just don't ever want to make people feel like, they have the pressure to have to do anything. It's just like we want you to want you to lead out of the overflow of your love relationship with Jesus. We don't want you to do it because we need it type deal. And so that's kind of my message to all the volunteers.
On the other side of that coin is your paid staff.
Yeah.
You're leading volunteers, and there are expectations, and there are, sometimes you have somebody that's in the family that has unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
How do you, as a leader, handle some of those disappointments that you navigate when you let somebody down that you had no intentions to let down? How do you navigate some of those things in your own heart and life, and also protect yourself to keep from becoming bitter or harsh or not wanting to reach out and love and respond and be open-handed?
Yeah, I just, and this may seem like a corny answer, I just don't think that much of people. And I know like that sounds kind of harsh. I just don't. And I think this is the bright side of growing up in my situation. It's like, I don't really just expect a ton out of people. And I know that's not like a great way to live life, but in reality, like where that comes from is letdown, right? It's just like if you've had a lot of letdown in your life, you just have those moments where you don't really expect a ton. But on the leadership side, it kind of helps me out a little bit because I just don't have high expectations for many people. But there are times when you are let down, and I think for me, what I always resort back to is nobody's perfect. Everybody has their issues. Everybody has their things. People's worldview. When our worldviews start to collide and our histories start to collide, and the way people see the world, and when you start to mix all that in, we are just, the way I see it is just, we are just primed for letdown at some point. And the way I kind of reconcile it in my heart is I always one of my mentors now is Beth Cunningham, who's one of the best humans on the planet, and she says anytime she's been let down, she gives herself a day to sit in it. It's like, all right, what am I let down? What am I grieving? What am I let down for? What am I upset about? She says I give myself a day to grieve it, and I promise myself that the next day I'm pushing for it. And I've kind of adapted that kind of mindset of like, if somebody hurts me or something lets me down, I give myself a moment to just like acknowledge the hurt, which for men is something that's very hard to do because we don't want to feel like we're soft in any form or fashion. But like we get hurt too. The male ego is fragile, it's a fragile thing. And so I allow myself to be hurt, and then from there, all right, what am I going to do about it now? Yep. And so like, and like I said, with growing up and not having a ton of expectations for people, I can usually rebound pretty quickly. And it's like, hey, for me, I was let down in this situation. This hurt me. This, even on the flip side of that, leading volunteers as well. Like there have been times that I've let them down, and so like, and I just let them know like, hey, I'm imperfect. I will tell you right now, I'm probably gonna let you down again. Like to be transparent, like I'm probably not gonna make the same mistake twice, but I'll probably let you down in another form or fashion in some point, because I actually don't think like don't hear this as a way as like I have low self-esteem, but I just don't think that much of myself either. Like I know I am not anything without the love and the help and the grace of Almighty God. So like because of that, don't put me on this
Well,
stool of like moral like moral superiority to anybody else. It's like I have issues just like everybody else has issues. And the difference between my issues and your issues is I know I got mine, and I know I'm not, and I know I can't do anything without the power of God helping me out to do it. And the anointing and the favor. I mean, I've just had such a favored life. Like it's just been awesome. But I think on one side, when I feel like I've been let down, I just don't. I take some time to think about it, but I also don't allow myself to almost put people on that pedestal of like, this person should never do that. Like this person was born into sin just like I was. Everybody's one decision away from stupid. And then I also, when I feel like I've hurt somebody, I just go and deeply apologetic, but I also tell them like, hey, like, you have to know that we're playing the same game here. We're playing on the same field, and I know I might have let you down here, and I apologize for that. But I need you to know that I'm never gonna make that mistake again. But you would be naive to think I'm not gonna make a mistake again. Yeah. And I think that just comes from like, I mean, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I feel like it's just has been kind of engraved in me that like we're all imperfect people doing things, trying to do. I led our growth track this Sunday, and we were talking about our leadership honor code at our church, and in the middle of it, I haven't read it in a while. I've just led it, so it's like I haven't read the honor code in a while. It's like I know what it says, but I haven't read the exact language. And one of the words it uses is the word strive, and I was like, that's the perfect definition of like we're all striving to be just like Jesus. If you're a believer, you're striving to be just like Jesus. But that strive, that word is a process. You're trying to get there. It's a pursuit. Like it's not somewhere that you ever actually arrive to. You just continually to do it. And I think people struggle with that. I think people struggle with,
for sure.
I think Maya Angelou says when someone shows you that she does say that, but she also says when you know better, you do better, and it's like that concept is a struggle for people. It's like if I don't know, I can't do, but when I do know and I don't do, that's when you should be offended. Yeah. That's the difference, and I think as I navigate both sides of that, I think I just continually to tell people like, hey, I'm assuming you didn't know, so now you know, so now let's do better. Yeah. And on the flip side, I didn't know this was going to treat you, you were going to react this way to this. Yeah. But now that I do know, you can hold me accountable to doing better now. But don't be naive to think I'm not going to do something else. It's like, and as a leader, I think that's a cool place to be because, and then you have some people that are like, you should never do that. And I'm like, well, you don't understand. Like, I'm just a human. But I think as a leader, it's a cool place to be with your team. That's the whole family concept of like, hey, we're all on this journey together. Same thing Brett was doing, right? Brett was just taking me along the journey. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. It was like, we're all on this journey together. And if you're offended by, now I'm talking about, things that are like repentant and like all those things. Like if you're offended by anything that might have happened that would have offended you and you don't understand that it's just a pursuit, then that's kind of something you got to reconcile within yourself type deal. So yeah, volunteers are fun, man, because they come in all forms and fashions and sizes and in different walks of life. But it is fun to kind of, because it just reminds me, I mean, it's a great microcosm of like a family to me. Yeah. It's just like, we're just one big blended family trying to figure it all out together. And so I love it.
Jay, I know you do a great job leading, and I think what I hear you saying as you go through that was, don't put unrealistic expectations on others, but then also don't put those on yourself as a leader. And then when you fail, knowing that you will fail, be quick to own it, ask for forgiveness, and don't stay in that place. Continue to move on. And I think that's something that we all can take, no matter whether we're leading volunteers or leading paid employees or leading in our family, don't put those unrealistic expectations on yourself. Don't put those unrealistic expectations on your kids or your spouse. And then when you mess up as a dad, I think one of the biggest gifts we can give our family as male leaders is being able to own our mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and correct those and change course. And I think that perfect picture of that, even with volunteers and talking about addressing, the lifestyle that we're called to live following Jesus is, hey, maybe you didn't know this. This is what God's called us to, and then expecting, pursuit of that striving to know Christ and to live like Christ. And when you do that, it makes it a lot easier to work together, because we really realize that, hey, we're all a mess, but He's not done with us, and He's working on us, and we're pursuing Him. So very well said. Thank you so much for that response.